At times, I'll run into a situation where I have what I refer to as color contamination, and that essentially just means color where it doesn't belong. And very often, that color contamination will literally be just color contamination. In other words, a change in color or an undesirable color where the texture is actually perfectly fine. I can see exactly that type of situation here. There's some green in the bark of the tree. I'm guessing there was an object close to the lens that was rendered completely out of focus. And so we have a color tint where we don't want it, but the texture is perfectly fine. So all we need to do is change the color in that particular area. And we can do that thanks to the color blend mode and the brush tool. I'll go ahead and start off by adding a new image layer, but I want a new image layer with special properties. So I'm going to hold the Alt key on Windows or the Option key on Macintosh while clicking on the Create New Layer button, the blank sheet of paper icon at the bottom of the Layers panel, and that will bring up the New Layer dialog where I can establish specific properties for this layer. The first thing I'll do is type a new name for this layer. I'll just go ahead and call this layer Color Fix, and then I'm also going to change the blend mode for the layer. I'm going to paint a color onto this layer, but I only want it to affect the color of the overall image, and so I'm going to use the color blend mode. I'll go ahead and choose that from the mode pop-up and then click OK, and I now have my color fix layer ready to apply a color correction that will not affect luminance values or brightness values in the photo, and therefore will not affect texture in the areas where I'm painting. I'll go ahead and choose the brush tool from the toolbox. I'll make sure that I'm working with a regular round brush with a 0% hardness, in other words, a soft blended edge brush. I want the blend mode to be set to normal. I'm using the color blend mode for my color fix layer, but for the brush itself, I want the normal blend mode. And of course, I want a complete fix for the image, so I'll leave that opacity set to 100%. Next, I need to choose which color I'm going to paint with. I have a green color that I don't want, but what I do want is bark color, perhaps some of these grays, some of these oranges and reds. So let's start off with a color that seems most dominant, maybe some of the gray areas in the bark. So with the brush tool active, I'll hold the Alt key on Windows or the Option key on Macintosh, and that will temporarily give me the eyedropper tool. I'll go ahead and click on an area of the bark, and that will sample that color, making it my foreground color. So again, I can hold the Alt key on Windows or Option key on Macintosh while clicking any area of the photo in order to sample that color. But bear in mind, I'm not going to be adjusting the overall luminance values in the photo. I'll only be affecting the color. So I'll go ahead and adjust my brush size using the left square bracket key to reduce the brush size or the right square bracket key to increase the brush size, and then I'll simply paint into the area that I want to correct. So you can see that I'm removing all of that green and replacing it with a bit of a gray tone. Now, for the moment, I'm painting in this entire area. I'm not going to worry about the specific colors too much because I can always come back and fine-tune the effect. For example, there are some areas that look a little bit reddish. I'll go ahead and click to sample that reddish color, and then in some of these darker areas, I'll adjust my brush size and paint into those dark areas so that we can add a little bit of that reddish effect. I can also choose some of the other color values that we find within the photo, and essentially just painting various color values into different areas of the photo to try to produce the most realistic effect possible, trying to essentially mimic what the rest of the image looks like. And I can continue in this way, painting additional colors into specific areas of the photo in order to produce the best result, with a removal of the color contamination, a retention of the texture, and the result being a very nice effect. I'll go ahead and turn off the color fix layer, and you can see we've gone from this green blob to an image that looks to have reasonably accurate color. I'll continue doing a little bit of touch-up work here, getting all the colors just right, but you can see I'm able to apply that color fix on a separate layer so it's completely non-destructive and only adjusting the color without adjusting the texture.